Okay, so thank you guys for joining me. I'm so excited to have you here. I have to say, I was really excited to interview you guys because you are a staple in our house.
Yeah, awesome.
You're literally like the only prepared baby food that I give my 9-month-old daughter, and she loves it.
Yay.
So yeah, so when you guys when your team reached out, I was so excited because literally like 5 days before, I was telling my husband, I love this company. I love what they're about. I would love to talk to the founders and get to know more and have the audience like get to know more about the products. So yay, thank you for
Timing.
coming.
Thanks. We love your work too.
Mhm.
I feel like we sculpted you out of clay or something. Like you're our ideal supporter and customer. So great to be
I
here.
am your ideal customer, I'm telling you, because like she started at 6 months, and that's when I found out about you guys through Lily Nichols. And you know, the thing that got me was I was like, bone broth in food, like amazing. And the animal products, because I was looking for options. And I mean, as we'll talk now, one of the things that I was really impressed about was how culinary your pouches and your flavor profiles are. I mean, like hold on, this is our favorite at the moment, the beef pot roast.
Yeah.
And I mean, my gosh, like when she drops a little bit, like I take a little bit, and I'm so impressed because usually that's not the reaction you have with baby food. So tell me, how have the babies received your profiles, your flavors? Do the parents give you feedback? Do they try it?
Yeah, really early on. Well, Joe and I couldn't figure out why no one was doing this, right, in the baby food space. So we did a ton of research and no one was doing it. And I looked all over the world, couldn't find any. And then I thought, oh no, maybe no one makes it because babies won't eat it. So I'm like, Joe, I call him. I remember being in my car on my way to my like other job. And I'm like, Joe, we got to make this baby food and get it into the mouths of babies and see if they'll even eat it. So we made up a bunch of batches in our kitchen. I'm like, how do you do focus groups with babies? Because they can't fill out a survey.
We weren't even
Right.
pregnant yet, so we didn't know any of the
No, we
new
didn't know anything.
babies. Like we
Yeah.
were just planning to get pregnant
Yeah.
when we discovered the lack of baby food. So we had to like find all our friends with kids
And they're friends with kids.
drove them all around town.
Mhm.
We made like eventually 30 different recipes of different versions to try.
Wow.
You know, to make sure babies would like it.
And the survey questions, I came up with 2 survey questions. How did your baby react when you gave them the food? And the answers are hilarious. Spit it out, and then opened his mouth for more, or turned head away and closed mouth and would not taste again. You know,
baby survey responses.
Yes. And then the second question was, how did you respond? So about, I would say 3/4 of the parents that we surveyed also did taste it. Not everybody did.
Okay.
It surprised me kind of.
Yeah.
But for our OG line, the chicken, the beef, the turkey, the bison, and the salmon, those are kind of targeted towards slightly younger babies, like
Right.
10 months, 12 months old. And they're a little bit more bland flavors because kind of early on, the taste buds are really just waking up around the 6-month mark. So having kind of a gentle ease into flavor is one route to go. And then there's also the flavor window, right? And you want to expose babies to a lot of different flavors. So when, science shows and studies show that when you introduce babies to a wide variety of flavors, or really whatever flavors you introduce to a baby between the kind of 5-month to 18-month mark,
Okay.
they're going to be set up to enjoy later in life. So if you give them only sweet stuff during that time, they're going to only want sweet stuff later. If
Totally.
you give them some spicy stuff, some bitter stuff, some sour stuff, kind of all along the way,
Yeah.
you're going to acclimate their palate to really adult foods, which is what you want, adult healthy foods. So we put a lot of greens, we put a lot of different herbs and spices. And like you said, that beef pot roast, that was an attempt for us at slightly increasing the age range of our pouches. So that one has a little bit more savory taste. It has a more complex flavor with aromatics added in. We add shiitake mushrooms to that one for that additional boost of nutrition, right? Mushrooms are super nutritious. And when we make that particular one at the factory, all the employees are like, man, that smells like mashed potatoes and gravy. We just love
It
this.
smells so good.
Mhm.
It
The
really
taste is
does.
really important to us. It's been a really big, there were a handful of other meat baby foods out when we started, and they all were disgusting. They mixed them with rice, they mixed them with beans, they mixed them with fruit.
Blueberries.
So it's like fruit and grains with meat and no fat and no salt is like recipe for gross. So all the
Yeah.
baby food is like, babies won't eat meat baby food, so we don't make any more because they don't like the ones we made. They're like, yeah, because you made them disgusting.
Yeah.
So our focus on the right combination of vegetables and meats, really quality meats, and then the fat, which the fat really rounds out the experience of the taste and the texture, really made it so babies love it. And now that's one of the biggest reasons parents will buy our products, because their baby wants it. They want to eat more of it. It's easy to get them to eat it. And as
Yeah.
anything they will eat, it's like, if it's actually nutritious, it's like, let them eat it.
It's actually nutritious. That's exactly right. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like you guys are really disrupting the baby food industry, because one of the things that I knew, I from my own health issues, was I really wanted to give my baby like the best quality meats and grass fed and wild caught and everything. And so you guys are just hitting that. And I thought to myself, I'm going to have to make purees, because I don't know how else I'm going to get the bone broth, the collagen, all of that good stuff. But I could tell you, thanks to you guys, I have not made purees. I think I made it like once and that's it. And now it's just like, oh, you want your pouch? Okay, here's your pouch. Turkey bolognese. My gosh. Yeah. So let's talk about that, because your products deliver quality fats, which are super important for babies, even in utero, but also when you're starting solids, and quality meats. A lot of parents, to my surprise, are kind of like scared to start off with meat as one of the first foods. So can we talk about like, why is it important as a first food for babies, and how did it dictate like how you were going to deliver this in your products, as opposed to what you were saying, Joe, about like what you saw on the market?
Yeah.
Well, we knew, so it didn't take us very long to figure out there already was a perfect baby food out there, and it was mother's milk. So I thought, so I dragged Joe to the milk bank here in Austin. I did all this milk research, and there's just a ton of fat and a lot of carbs and a decent amount of protein in breast milk itself. And so we knew that we wanted to make a baby food meal that approximated those macronutrients. So we knew we were going to need protein. We knew we were going to want a clean meat source. It was just kind of a given. I don't think we ever even questioned that, did we?
Breast milk's an animal product. So animal protein, animal fat is easy to digest. That babies have all the enzymes they need to digest animal foods more than any other food you discovered, more than vegetables, more than fruit, certainly more than grain, and so it really is like actually the easiest thing for them to eat.
And it's the most nutrient dense. When you think about ounce for ounce, bite for bite, every parent knows that each little bite you can squeeze into that tiny mouth and make it go down into the stomach is it's like valuable real estate.
Yeah.
So you want to pack as much possible nutrition into that bite, and really well sourced meats, bite for bite, just have so many more vitamins and minerals and really health inducing compounds and nutrition.
With plenty of fat. Breast milk, 60% fat. So the fact that the aisle had no fat, I mean, there was pretty much zero fat of any kind on the baby food aisle. A little bit of milk, a little bit of avocado here and there, but certainly no good animal fat beyond that. And so that was a big piece for us in the beginning, was like, we've got to bring fat into here. Animal fats, olive oil, avocado oil, the best, most digestible fats.
So really what we did was we swapped out the kind of the fruity carbs for starchy veggies plus fat. Because the fruit pouches sell so well because they're sugar bombs. They're huge bags of sugar that you're feeding to your kid. And when you look at the back and it says 9 grams of sugar, It might not sound like a lot, like 9 little grams, that's small. But when you think about a 15-pound baby and compare that to a 150-pound adult, you add a 0 to that 9.
I know, that's
And that ends up
crazy.
being 90 grams. And
That's
I would be
insane.
a mess if I ate a 90 grams of sugar breakfast.
And they eat 2 or 3 of them a day, which
Oh
equates
my
to
gosh.
like a Snickers bar. It's about the same amount of sugar as a Snickers bar if you eat 3 of those pouches.
And we had a friend who was when we first started the company, we had a friend who was working at a daycare. And she said every morning the parents would bring these big bags of fruit pouches and drop them off at daycare. And she said none of the workers would give them to them until 30 minutes before pickup. And then they were going to let the meltdowns happen.
Oh my gosh.
And I
Yeah.
was like, all right, these people know what's up. They know what,
Sugar
having
spikes.
what sugar
The
spikes
effects
does
of
to your
sugar.
mood, to your mental state. And both my parents worked in mental health. And so I know the correlation between nutrition and gut health, the microbiome,
Yes.
your
Yes.
mood, your mental state, your mental illness, mental health, right? And just looking
Absolutely.
at the state of mental illness in our children, it's a huge crisis. And I personally think that diet plays a massive role. There's other
I couldn't agree with you more.
toxins, media, and all kinds of other things that don't help, right? But I
Yeah.
think that it's rooted in diet. And if people were willing to make that, I won't say easy switch, but that one switch, I think we would have a lot smaller of a crisis, or no crisis on our hands.
Well, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And as someone who I've struggled with anxiety, insomnia, panic attacks, but I've also struggled with inflammatory bowel conditions and, like inflammatory stuff in my gut. So for me, having our first baby, it was very important to really guard her gut health and to mold it and shape it. And unfortunately, high sugar really wreaks havoc on a baby's gut. So, I mean, it's completely, so, given that, it makes sense. And there's science and there's research behind that. However, it seems like there's a contradiction between the science and the research and what we know in the paleo lifestyle and gut health and what our pediatricians are kind of pushing in the offices. And so my question to you is, how have your products been received by the medical community? And has there been any pushback or any feedback in any way?
So far, 100% of it, as far as I know, has been positive. So I have a friend whose son ended up in Dell Children's Medical Center for a little while in intensive care. And we were giving him a bunch of our baby food to put in the feeding tubes to help him stay healthy. And she said, and it was right when we first launched years ago. And she said she was showing these doctors, I'm getting goosebumps. And she said that the doctors were like, wow, this stuff is amazing. Like,
Wow.
where can we get this? Because at the time it was only online or whatever. It wasn't easy to find like it is now. And, and then we've had pediatricians, multiple a lot of pediatricians reach out actually and say, this is amazing. I recommend your stuff to my patients. There's some pediatricians that are obesity experts where unfortunately they start seeing patients around 18 months old, and they switch them to a paleo type diet. They switch them to our foods and things get better. Mm-hmm. So for us, I personally think marketing plays a huge role in those recommendations that you talked about, kind of old fashioned, outdated recommendations.
The rice cereals and
Exactly. I think that, like the old way to do things is to drop off cases of these products at doctors' offices, and then the doctors recommend it because it's sitting right there. And, I don't think that's very ethical. And that's something that we don't do that. Although I would love to, because then more babies would have access to healthy foods, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a catch-22 a little bit.
There's no debate in the medical community that meat and vegetables are great for foods for babies.
Whole foods,
it's not in
fat.
The USDA guidelines were recently fully revised to say basically meat's really important, sugar's bad. It's all there. What hasn't caught up is what they're still recommending for babies that isn't good. So everybody agrees meat and veggies are good. Yeah. They also think rice cereal is good. They also think fruit purees are good. So it's like, that's where, there's dispute is like, should we say don't eat rice cereal, instead focus on meat if you want iron? For some reason, the pediatrician establishment still has that fortified rice cereal recommendation, despite all the arsenic, despite the gut
Exactly.
issues, despite the constipation created by fake iron.
But it's
all the
also,
issues.
it's hope, there's hope, because it's less and less every year. You know, we
lot of
just
pediatricians
talked to
changing it.
one of the major baby retailers in this country, and they were saying they know that pediatricians are recommending rice cereals less and less and less. And that just makes my mommy heart and my, like, you know, nutrition heart really swell up with
Yeah.
pride. Progress is being made, and, you know, alternatives are out there. And so that's what we're here for, to help educate and to provide the products, to give parents choices. Right? If they want the fruit stuff, it's there. And we don't necessarily think it's super duper evil all the time, right?
Right.
Whole fruits.
In moderation, right.
Exactly. But there's another choice on the shelf now. Parents now have options.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's really awesome that you're bringing that up, because in light of the recent findings in both baby food and formula, we've had major recalls. We've had congressional reports with alarming, you know, rates of heavy metals. And it's really scaring a lot of us parents who want to do better by our children. And now we're kind of, you know, for me, I was outraged when this happened, because it's like, not only am I now overwhelmed with all the worries of first-time parenthood, but now I have to worry about like heavy metals and things that are readily available in the supermarket aisles for my baby. Like, this is crazy. So, you know, given the current climate of this industry, how does Serenity Kids test for heavy metals in your products? How do you minimize those, and how do you deal with this?
Yeah, so we actually found out about heavy metals. You know, it's been probably 10 years in the news, but we didn't really know much about it until probably the year we launched our products, the year after, right when I had a baby, your baby's age. And I was like, wait a second, what? I felt like I'd been blindsided, like hit by a freight train. It seemed impossible to me to think that the FDA doesn't care enough about our children to help keep them safe and keep their brains functioning properly. Like, it was just preposterous. I could not believe it. And I was like, you know what? We're not doing that. We're not going to participate in that stuff. We're going to find a way to build a quality program. And we went out and hired an amazing quality director. And she's been with us for 2 years. She has a kid just a little bit younger than mine. And so her kid was raised on our foods as well. So we give our babies the actual foods that we make. So we know that they need to be the best possible. So we have a rigorous quality program. We test raw ingredients before we produce.
Okay.
We test finished products.
Okay, great.
We have a third party verifier. We work with Clean Label Project, which does a great job of comparing baby foods in different categories, and they do pet foods. They do all different kinds of products to see if they're free from, or, you know, like the lowest levels of it. They do heavy metals, pesticides, plasticizers, environmental contaminants.
Over 200 contaminants they test for.
So
and what's this called? The Clean Label
Clean
Project.
Label Project, and they have different levels of certification you can win. We have achieved their Purity Award, which is the highest, the best in class, the lowest levels in the industry. And, you know, we had to set our own standard because the FDA does not have heavy metal standards. So we had to do a lot of research with scientists to figure out, well, you can't ever eliminate all of them. They're naturally occurring. Our soil's polluted. You know, there's only certain supply we can get. So if we can't get it to zero, what is the level? And so we originally based our program off of the European Union standards, which are one of the strictest in the world. So all of our products fall well below European Union standards, but we're most of those standards are high compared to our products. Like, we're well below even those standards. The FDA is now in the process of creating a standard. They've said it'll take 7 years to implement a standard. So we're one of the baby food companies to be joining with a bunch of state attorney general's offices, led by New York State attorney generals, that's pressuring the FDA to create an interim standard that will come into place sooner.
It's more rigorous.
It's more rigorous because they want to they want to do an average of all the metals in the industry and say, hey, whatever the average is, that's the new standard. And we're like, what? That's
too high.
It's all too high. Like, you can't regulate it based off that. We should be regulated off of what's possible, not what's currently out there.
Oh my gosh. And like 7 years, that's almost 2030. Like
Yeah,
this is
you're really on it.
2022. How
Yeah.
are we still dealing with this stuff? Oh my gosh. Okay. Um, so that's what I like about you guys, because I know some of the biggest baby food companies, they were testing levels with the raw materials, but they weren't testing the finished product. So you guys are testing in and you're testing out, independently testing and all. Okay, that's awesome. That's great. Because yeah, I mean, you're right. There's no way to get around, sweet potatoes and these types of things. They pull the nutrients from the soil. So okay, I love that.
But I also think that if we have contaminated food supply, right? Think like big macroeconomics problems. If we have contaminated food supply, who should get the good stuff? It's the little babies who are doubling their spine size in their first year of life, whose neurological development is still happening. Their brains aren't even full size yet, right? And these neurotoxins can really hinder that and really affect their learning and their cognition for the rest of their lives.
I know.
Right? So that's what we are talking about. Like, we know there's contamination, and we're going to have to make decisions about which citizens get the best stuff. And we argue it's the little ones.
Right now, our foods are safer than buying it yourself. Like using our sweet potato puree is less likely to have heavy metals because we do such rigorous testing than if you were to buy a sweet potato on the shelf and make it, right? Which what Serenity's saying is maybe it could always be that way, because if the supply was prioritized for babies, but that's a policy decision. That's a macro kind of thing that we're doing it as a little company. Bigger companies could certainly do it, but the government's got to be involved there and say, hey, this is the standard.
Absolutely.
Grow sweet potatoes at this level, it needs to go to baby food first.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and you guys, you mentioned you started selling your products online, and now you are in major retailers. I mean, I get you guys at Thrive, but you're where, like Whole Foods, everywhere. Walmart, I mean, everywhere, right?
Yeah, we just launched in Walmart. We're 1,000 Walmarts all over the country. We're in all Kroger's now, and most Targets, and then every natural food store you can think of. Sprouts, Natural Grocers, Whole Foods, lots of regional chains, co-ops, and we sell
Erewhon, we love Erewhon.
We're the fastest selling shelf-stable baby food in the entire natural food channel and all of the natural food stores. So the natural channels really adopted us, and meat has traditionally not been a big seller in natural. There's more vegetarians, there's more of this idea that meat isn't good for the planet or isn't good for your health. So, we really proved, and the paleo movement in general has proved that it's not the cow, it's the how, right? It's the way it's raised.
I love that.
And so if we can, committing to ethical sourcing, regenerative sourcing is both better nutritionally, but also better for the planet. And ethically, it feels better for the consumer to buy. Okay,
so let's just jump right into that. You have a beautiful mission, and part of that is your environmental mission. And most of us aren't really versed in what regenerative agriculture is and why it's important. So can you briefly explain, like, what is it? Why should we know more about it? And what made you go in that direction?
Yeah, I'm a pretty passionate environmental activist. I've been for a good part of my life.
I used to sleep in trees.
Yeah, I would like part of the Earth First in college, would sit in trees to keep them from cutting down, chaining myself to bulldozers and things. So I've been very passionate about it. I was actually vegan during that time, vegetarian for 4 years, because I thought it was better for the planet. Didn't work at all for my body, and so discovered that it was not the right thing for me. But I was always very interested in local farming, local agriculture, how we can minimize the carbon footprint just by sourcing locally, which also means animal products, because you can't get local food in the winter unless it's meat, usually in the Midwest where I was. So, we knew we wanted the most nutritious meat. That was our first priority, was nutrition. And we knew that pasture-raised systems, grass-fed, pasture-raised poultry, pork, are better nutritionally. There's lots of studies that compare, and that the omega-3 ratios are better, the vitamin, everything's better about pasture-raised meat. And I want also to support family farms, because my grandparents are family farmers, and I grew up watching their struggles, but also their connection to the earth. And so we had this family farms mission as well. in sourcing family farm pasture raised meat, we discovered this regenerative agriculture movement. We were taught a lot of it by the founders of Epic Bar, who are on our advisory board.
Ooh, love them.
Yeah, they're great.
Okay.
They're from Austin, and they've been huge supporters of us. Our branding is very similar.
I can see that. You guys are very.
We share their brand. They gave us their branding person to do our branding. So it's like,
oh, nice. I mean, your branding is spot on. So, I mean, yay, good for you guys. Okay.
Yeah, so regenerative agriculture is really the future of food and environmentalism. It has the opportunity to sequester the entire carbon load that we've dumped in the atmosphere the last 100 years. It's both, our agriculture is both a huge part of the problem. Animal agriculture gets a really bad rap. Plant agriculture is just as bad in terms of how much carbon emissions, tilling and heavy machinery and pesticides and all that stuff. So, the whole agriculture system is broken and is destroying the planet, particularly in America, we're highly industrialized agriculture. And regenerative farming can fix all that. Animals are designed to live in harmony with nature. They interact with nature, they create harmony and balance, particularly ruminants that lived in huge herds. The bison regenerated North America for thousands of years. The white settlers systematically killed the bison in order to remove American Indians, which also then desertified the plains, brought in industrial agriculture to till and add all these chemicals, and then we've got the huge problems that we have today. So the solution is to bring these herd animals back, bison, cattle, goats. They're all ruminants. They digest grass and essentially sequester carbon through the process of eating dead grasses, leaving their manure, fertilizer, and moving on to another area. And what regenerative farmers have done is they've mimicked this, and the Savory Institute is a big leader.
Alan Savory has a great TED Talk for whoever's interested. It's 12 minutes. It changed my whole life.
He outlines why it works, and they've revitalized thousands of acres of desert in Africa and turned it into millions. That's what I'm going to say. Millions of acres of Africa, and turned desert into grasslands, creating food supply and changing village, creating economic security.
There's a really great Kiss the Ground. It's a great movie that's on Netflix, narrated by Woody Harrelson. It's more interesting than it sounds. Took me a while to watch it, but after I watched it, I was like, oh, it's so hopeful and inspiring and positive. And that's part of the movement that we have joined, and we're building up the supply chain of these meats. A lot of the farmers that we work with didn't sell to businesses before us. So they've built out, like, how do they sell to businesses? I mean, it's a completely different business, selling to consumers and selling to businesses.
It's an ancient indigenous farming practice that mimics the harmony of animals with the earth. It requires multi-species approaches to farming. And a lot of farmers have been doing it just intuitively, figuring out how to revitalize their land. But the fundamental core principle is that it regenerates. It actually improves the land. It makes it better than they found it. Improving soil microbial growth is one of the key indicators, all the microbes in the soil, which has a lot of parallels to our gut microbiome. There's the soil microbiome and the gut microbiome have this incredible metaphorical symbiosis. That's like, what's the meat that is regenerating the planet is also regenerating our gut, and that's hurting. It's also hurting our gut. So it through increasing soil microbial growth, you're reducing soil runoff, which sequesters water better, so we're not having the drought issues. And then it sequesters carbon. It pulls carbon out of the atmosphere, puts it back in the soil to feed these microbes to then create more plant life. And then that essentially cleans the air and creates green grasslands from desert.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so we're going to post the links for that TED Talk and the Kiss the Ground documentary, because I recently just saw it too, and it blew my mind. Blew my mind. So that's part of the reason why we love you guys in our household. Like, you taste good and you're doing good for the planet. And I got to say, I think becoming a parent this year, or no, sorry, last year, not this year, last year. I don't even know. I lose sense of time. So yeah, becoming a parent has led me to be more conscious of the environmental aspect of things. So I love that you guys have that social component to that. Let's circle back around to your products, because I really wanted to hone in on. So we've talked about the quality meats. Let's talk about the quality fats that we find in your products, because if they're quality fat, I remember reading Billy Nichols' book, and also like Rebecca Fett's Brain Health from Birth when I was pregnant. And they're talking about how important it is to eat a lot of great quality fats, even before you get pregnant, to prep your body for pregnancy. And then when the baby's growing, to, get the brain cells going and the nervous system forming and everything. So once the baby's out and they have weaned themselves from formula or from breast milk and they're starting solids, it's even more important. What are some of the high quality fat sources that we can see in your products, and why are they important at this developmental stage?
So we knew that we were going to have a lot of fat in our products from the outset, right? Because breast milk has a lot of fat. We wanted to bring fat and protein back to the aisle. And we also knew that one of the best fats we could choose was fats, fatty cuts from the animals themselves. So in one of our flagship flavors, the beef with organic sweet potato and kale, we use a 70% fat beef. 70% lean, 30% fat beef to make that.
Okay.
So that one is completely fatified by the meat itself. And then we've chosen the chicken thighs in our chicken flavor to make sure that we include that chicken fat, that really healthy, super nutrient rich fat source. That one didn't have quite as much fat in it, so we added in a little bit of, I think that one's got avocado oil.
Okay.
Avocados are super nutritious, right? Everybody kind of knows that. Everyone kind of agrees on that one thing, right? Avocados are great. And then we also included some of our other flavors that are leaner cuts of meat, like our wild bison is just a leaner cut. It's a leaner animal. So we use some olive oil.
I saw the olive oil, yeah.
And
fantastic.
And then one of my favorite flavors we have is the salmon. So we buy wild caught salmon from Alaska, and that the DHA and the omega-3s in that fish itself, they come from the fish itself, right? I think that one also is fortified with a little bit of oil.
To get up to 5 grams.
Yeah, we really wanted to make sure that all of our pouches had a significant amount of protein, a significant amount of fat. And then when you're looking for a full, well-rounded, balanced meal, you can find that in one little container, super convenient. So, and
totally.
Then those are our pouches. So it's for the fat side of our puffs. So we came out with a grain-free puff about a little over a year ago now. And we knew we wanted to include some fat, and we wanted to include as much fat and protein in all of our products as we can. It is pretty hard to snackify fat and protein, but we did succeed. We've got some olive oil in those puffs.
Yeah.
We wanted to have more, but then it was like messy and baby snacks don't really go well together.
Yeah.
So we backed off on it a little bit, but that one's a nice olive oil.
And we got bone broth. We dehydrated bone broth and included dehydrated bone broth in the puff, which is, I think we're the first to snackify bone broth. As far as
I told you, that's how you guys got me. You had me at bone broth.
And then
there you go.
That's one of my favorite ones.
Pumpkin cinnamon.
I give her one at a time, and she comes up, and then you see the dogs, because once she accidentally like dropped it, and like they went for it, and they're like, oh, we're in on this too. Like I love, and then pumpkin and cinnamon. It's like, who doesn't love that flavor?
Right.
We're talking about fat. We got to talk about our formula.
Yeah.
Because this is
okay. Let's talk about your formula. That was another question.
Fatty acid profile.
I gotta pull it out.
Please, let's talk, especially in light of all of this what is it? The recalls and everything. I mean, it's just, so I had some issues producing a lot of breast milk when my baby was born. And luckily I had done some research, and I had no idea, because you guys just came out with that, right? Yeah. Like I did not find anything in the US that was as strong of profile as the European brands. So after a lot of research, I went with HIP, but even HIP, I'm still like, I really wish there were some things that were not on there, So let's talk about your baby formula or your toddler formula. And and let's talk about the difference between what's marketed as like infant formula versus toddler formula, and how soon can a baby drink your stuff?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I also had trouble nursing. I was never planning to make a formula product, but then she weaned at 9 months and I was like, oh, now I have to find formulas to give her. And I also chose a German formula. I chose the Hala, which, those are harder to find these days. The FDA has really cracked down on European formula imports, but kind of right around that same time, I knew I wanted to try to make a better formula to see. And we succeeded in making the best formula on the planet, as far as I'm concerned.
I love it.
In terms of your question, so ours does say on it, it says it's our grass-fed A2 whole milk toddler formula. And there are, of course, really strict regulations around infant formula, which there should be. It's a product for our nation's most vulnerable population. So there's kind of 3 major categories of rules for that. One is 29 nutrients that has a range, must meet this range, can't be higher than this range that the FDA puts out. And ours does meet those 29 nutrients. The other big requirement is that it's made in a formula that has been inspected properly, right? And the facility that has really high cleanliness standards and that can actually do something that's safe for those babies. And ours is produced in a facility like that. And then the other requirement that the FDA has right now is that there are infant feeding studies that are performed. So, and this is what the one that we don't meet. And I have some issues with it just on moral grounds. So the way that the studies work, I've looked into it because, we might do that at some point. And the first thing you do is you test your formula on baby mice. And if these mice grow a certain amount by eating your formula, then you can test it on live babies. And baby mice hate lactose, which is the natural carbohydrate source that's in mother's milk, that's in cow's milk. So baby formula companies instead put corn syrup, maltodextrin, all these other starches. Mice will eat them and grow more, and they're also cheaper and more shelf stable and easier.
I had no idea.
It's a huge problem that I have with it. And then also testing anything on human babies. I don't know.
Literally pay the moms.
It's a little
they're paid
unethical
to feed their baby this unapproved formula and then monitor their growth. So no other country that we know of requires this. Europe certainly doesn't require it. And so this is it costs millions of dollars and
takes many years,
3 years to complete. So it really limits innovation.
3 years, wow.
For small companies, at least 3 years, depends on, plus there's all these ingredient rules. It's all regulated by the Formula Act of 1980, which is based on science from the 70s.
So 50-year-old science.
So our formula regulations are way out.
I've heard that and I was just like flabbergasted that in the US, and meanwhile in Europe, that's not the case, right?
No, they revise their standards every few years. In fact, I just downloaded the most recent one. It's 106 pages long. I cannot wait to read it. And they're doing all these interesting studies, like what about goat's milk and what about probiotics and what about, oligosaccharides and for toddler formula, just for infants. They have a huge prevalence of toddler formula actually in Europe. The US is, for good reasons, some lawmakers and watchdog groups have really poo-pooed toddler formula, primarily because a lot of the ones out there are corn syrup mixed with synthetic vitamins.
You might as well feed the milk if you're going to do that.
Exactly. So that would make sense because our standards are lower. In Europe, their standards are much higher, and they actually do recommend follow-on or toddler formula more often to their, 1-year-old and 2-year-old patients, the doctors do.
The simple explanation is we're only allowed to recommend our formula for 12 months and up. We're only allowed to call it a toddler formula.
Okay.
And there are a lot of benefits to toddler formula. It is better than just plain milk because we start with A2 whole milk to begin with. Regeneratively farmed A2 whole milk, which is pretty hard to find. Anyway,
so I was going to ask you about that. What's the difference between there's A1 and A2? Like what?
Yeah.
How do you explain that to people who don't know?
Yep. So there's a beta casein protein. They've been named A1 and A2. And most mammal milk in this country, and in the whole world, is A2. So human milk is A2, goat's milk is A2, a lot of cow's milk is A2, camel milk is A2. But there have been some genetic mutations in certain breeds of cows that now produce A1 milk. And A1 milk, the way that it's digested is more irritating to the human digestive tract and is just harder to digest. So a lot of people who have trouble digesting milk or milk products, it might be the A1, and you might not have as big of an issue if you try the A2. So
if they can tolerate goat, they could tolerate A2 dairy cow.
Likely.
Basically.
I mean, there's still there are real things like allergies. They're just a lot less prevalent than we think they are.
Okay.
It's more an intolerance in a lot of people. And
fundamentally, human milk is A2. And so if you're going to try to mimic human milk with a formula, one of the baseline things is get the protein right.
Right. Okay.
The second thing is get the fatty acid profile right, which is incredibly complex. And that's kind of what led us to this topic, because most of the other brands use industrial seed oils,
Yes.
canola oil, sunflower oil, so forth. We hate those. They're inflammatory.
They're very inflammatory.
They're, essentially industrial waste product we're feeding to babies. So we have the most complex fatty acid profile of any formula ever created. We use 8 different fat sources. You can read them
8
off.
different fat sources. Let's read them off.
It's my favorite thing about this product. So the first one is the A2 whole milk itself. So we don't strip the milk fat out. Most formulas are made with skim milk.
Almost all of them are not milk. They take the fat out.
But
I did not know that.
Yeah, we want to leave the milk fat in.
I wonder if it's something to do with the mice studies.
It's possible. I actually think it's because the industrial seed oils have it is really hard. It's also really hard to get the right balance of these certain fatty acids. Yeah. And then industrial seed oils are a little bit easier that way.
It looks good on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We use A2 whole milk. We use extra virgin olive oil, which is coconut oil. We use palm oil, which, kind of gets a bad rap too. This one is sustainably sourced. And the reason we include it in a small amount is because one of the most prevalent fatty acids in human milk is palmitic acid. And it is really hard to find that source if you're not looking at industrial seed oils. So their industrial seed oils do contain palmitic acid, and palm oil also contains palmitic acid. So there are some studies that show that that formulas with really high prevalence of palm oil are irritating to a baby's gut, and that is true. But we use just a little bit to kind of round out that fat profile.
Okay.
We also use cocoa butter, which is a really nice saturated fat that we didn't intend to make it taste really good, but it also tastes really good, which is bonus, right?
Man, we're gonna have to try that.
And then one of my other favorite ingredients is algal oil. We use wild algal oil for the DHA content, and it is wild sourced, so it's not organic. And because we use such certified organic, because it's a wild food, so you can't have a wild food be organic. So therefore our product technically is not organic.
Prevented us from having
even though everything in there is organic, but we couldn't call organic.
That's really good to know though.
Yeah. So we've had to sacrifice, the organic standard, but we make the choice in favor of nutrition. Whenever there's a hard choice to make and a hard call, we choose the babies every time.
Amazing.
And then the other fat that we use is egg lecithin, which is another really good source of choline. Oh, there's another one in here too. Of
choline, so good.
And the D8 and the fats are really great.
And there's a lot of studies that show that egg allergies are not triggered by egg lecithin. So we have to put an egg call out on there. But if you're worried about allergies, the egg lecithin is actually pretty much a safe ingredient.
And then sunflower lecithin, which is another really super nutrient dense fat that provides the right balance of fatty acids, and actually even just helps in the manufacturing process, which is just a convenient byproduct of using that ingredient. So that's probably the thing I'm most proud about with the formula. I mean, we've upgraded every single macronutrient source. We've upgraded the protein, we've upgraded the fats, we've upgraded the carbs because we use lactose. But it took us so long to figure out which fats to include and which ratios. And it was just like a really complicated science problem and math problem, but I'm really, really, really proud of the results that we have.
Man, that's really admirable. And it's so timely. So where can parents find your toddler formula? Is it in the same, I know I've seen it on Thrive and things like that, but Is it anywhere where we find the pouches? Are we likely to find the
Not
toddler?
quite.
Not yet. It's
We're
still
working,
new.
yeah, for sure online. So on our website, on Amazon, we just launched the larger can on our website. So you can get
Okay.
the discount size for the heavy users. And and then Whole Foods is carrying it as well. So you can get it in any Whole Foods. It just launched at Sprouts. So, we're rolling it out. It's a slower adoption, but it's coming out. There's, out of stocks everywhere. You try to find infant formula throughout this country. They're almost it's out of stock. They're putting limitations on it because, the FDA has these outdated regulations that prevent innovation. They cracked down on European formula. They banned it last year, and now
They did.
Then they failed to regulate the listeria in the plant, despite the regulations. They didn't enforce them well. They knew about this listeria issue since last September. And then, it became public knowledge a couple months ago, and that led to the shutdown. Now you can't get infant formulas. So, it's like, what do parents do?
Super frustrating.
Meanwhile, we can't advertise our formula as infant formula, even though it's superior.
And we do have some customers who tell us that they take our formula to their pediatrician and they're like, hey, I think I'd like to give this to my 8-month-old pediatrician. What do you think? And we've heard reports of some pediatricians saying, oh, this is fine for your baby. So if you're interested in the ingredient profile, if you think that it might work for your baby's particular issues,
check with your pediatrician.
Your pediatrician and find out.
Or any practitioner,
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, we just covered that about the rationing and the shortages of poor parents trying to get supply. And I mean, it's really scary stuff.
So sad.
Really scary stuff. So that's amazing. So you guys now have the formula, the pouches, the puffs, anything else in the works?
We have all kinds of stuff in the works.
We're going to keep growing our products with our daughter. She's 3.5 now. So we're looking at the toddler snacks that can, continue to age up. And we have and then eventually we want to be a leading children's food company. So in the long run, we're going to keep aging up well past baby and, become
I love it.
children's food companies. But for now, we're focusing on baby and that older toddler segment. So we're about basically everything on the aisle needs an upgrade. There's really anything we don't make.
Anything I have to buy from somebody else, it's painful.
It's all
right?
There's compromises. Nutrient dense versions of all that other stuff. So we're considering all of them. It's really just a matter of which one's next, not which one. Eventually we'll do them all. So
I love that.
We've got a lot under development and always need taste testers. So I might send you some prototypes if you want to get in.
Bring it over. We're working on cooking. We're working on getting baby number 2 over here. So you just keep that coming. We're gonna keep it going. That's awesome. You guys have done such a good job with, the company, the brand, the mission, the education, and that was one of my other questions, right? Like, a lot of us weren't raised with healthy eating habits. We're children of the 80s, 90s. And so I feel like a lot of us really want to do better by our children, but maybe perhaps we haven't adopted optimal eating habits ourselves. So what would you say, like what tips can you give the parents who aren't personally quite there, but really want to instill and model that in their kids as they start like eating solids and, the flavor window importance and all of that?
Well, we eat our ice cream after she goes to bed. I actually have found that I do think one of the big problems with how parents feed their kids. So, French fries are the number one vegetable for children's under 2 years old. I mean, it is criminal. And why is that? Of course they taste good. French fries are awesome. But it's also, that parents themselves are eating them, and you can't deny your kids the food that are in front of you, right? I mean, you could try. Good luck.
Totally.
So, and then also parents are dealing with their own sense of self-worth, their own, body issues, their own health issues.
Yeah.
So for me, it has been, super convenient for my health that I do want to model these good behaviors for my kid, that I do show her the vegetables that are on my plate, that we do cook vegetables in our kitchen, and I'll tell you, I probably eat healthier now that I'm a mom. I don't know.
You were always pretty
I
healthy.
was pretty healthy.
Yeah, compared to being pregnant, you eat healthy.
Oh yeah, when I was pregnant.
That's the biggest exception ever. I mean, my gosh, that first
Yeah.
trimester, I don't know about you, but that first trimester, I just wanted carbs. I didn't
Oh,
care what form. That was the
brutal.
only thing I could stomach.
I'll never forget this one day Joe came home and I had a pizza on the table, a whole pizza in front of me.
It's like picking the whole town.
Like I had, and like I would eat one pizza a year, I'd go out to pizza like once a year, and I had this whole one because I just hadn't eaten all day, and it was the evening, and I was starving, but I just felt so sick, and I couldn't stomach anything other than comfort food.
Yeah.
So I ate the pizza.
So there's some practical tips, try to only have healthy foods in our pantry and kitchen,
Yeah.
so that if we eat weird at a restaurant or at a party,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
if she has French fries at a restaurant, chicken finger, whatever, not as big a deal, but like day to day, we have only healthy food choices. She can have any of the food choices she
80-20
wants.
type of thing.
You can do anything in the kitchen you can eat because it's all healthy.
That's true.
Like she said, if we're gonna have junk food or gonna indulge less healthy food, do it just away from her. Don't let her see you do it. And these days with her being 3, it's a sugar debate all the time. She's always wanting sugar, it's like,
Yeah.
Addictive.
so we have this
It totally is.
protein before sugar rule, which we explain is not a rule we made. It's a rule our bodies have that.
Oh, that's good.
That like our bodies said, if you eat sugar without protein, like you can get sick, you can be grumpy, it's not good for you. So we tell her about those consequences. She's very clear about eating a hot dog before if we go to a birthday party.
So we've had a lot of birthday parties,
You want a
right?
birthday cake, you gotta eat the hot dog, or whatever it is. So
That's great.
so that she has a way to eat it and celebrate and be part of the group, but it's like that we're not faced with that awful sugar crash later.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And you're teaching her to understand the consequences of choices, which is brilliant. I think I'm going to adopt that too.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, and this is a question that I've been wondering too, right? So you guys are husband and wife, you're parenting together, you are business partners, and as someone who, my husband's my business partner too, and we work, especially since the pandemic, we're working like mostly from home now. Like, what tips do you have to other parents who are in the trenches and who are wearing all these different hats, but all together as one? How do you guys do it?
That's a good question.
We've talked about starting a support group for any
Sign
young
us up.
people working together, but there's a few things we've learned doing this for several years now. A big challenge is when to talk about work and when not to talk about work.
Boundaries.
It's easy to just talk about work all the time. So one of the rules we have is not to talk about work in bed. We break the rule all the time, but at least one of us can be like, hey, we're in bed, no more work talk. We've been able to maintain, we try for a weekly date night. Of course, it doesn't happen weekly, but if we try for weekly, at least it happens 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes we talk about getting a babysitter every Friday night, like a fixed babysitter, like we have to go out, we have to do something, we have a babysitter. We haven't gotten to that point, but that's one way. It'd be like, make yourself have a date night. And we're allowed to talk about work in the car on the way to whatever we're going to just like get any last things out, but then no more work at dinner or the party or wherever we're going to, no more work talk after that. We've always had coaches or counselors with us. Like you just cannot do it alone.
Same.
We just save the shit list, we call it.
We do call it
the list of stuff that we just
for the sessions.
For those sessions, we just have conversations in front of them. Sometimes they don't do anything, but it's like we're more professional, we're more grounded. In the beginning, we thought a lot when we were trying to work at home. So we started going to co-working space, or we opened an office because we're more professional at the office than we will be like on the couch, is triggered or fight. So there's little things like that.
And then we learned to who's going to make the decision. Is this a decision we both need to make together and we need to come to an agreement? Or is this a decision I'm going to make or a decision he's going to make? Like figuring that out ahead of time. Oh, well, that's an operations thing. I'll make that one. Or that's a marketing thing. I'll make that one, right? Figuring out where we don't actually need, you're a mom, we're parents. We don't have time to have needless discussions that aren't important. If I trust him to make a decision with this certain thing, I'll just be like, I trust you, just go figure it out. I don't care. And, it's just, let's keep moving. And that's one way that we'll do it. So keep the the harder discussions for the ones where you really both actually have to be making the decision,
The
and
really high level strategy.
yeah, both need to be in
Yeah.
agreement and fully aligned with how it's working.
The day-to-day just have to be committed to not letting the business relationship hurt the
Yeah.
personal relationship. The personal relationship is the foundation,
First.
and any success we have in business together is going to come from a strong connection that we have. So if that starts to hurt it, like it's all, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
There's nothing good's going to come from that foundation being rocked.
And that's something we talk about with Della when we go on our dates, because I will never forget when she was, like 2.5 maybe, and she's like, the light bulb turned on. No, actually, I think she was 3. The light bulb turned on in her brain when she started realizing that when we were going on dates, we were choosing to not take her. Oh, heartbreaking. And she's like, "You're not taking me." And I'm like, "We have to stay." Like, don't. It was really hard for me. And so then we realized that we needed to explain to her how important it is that we go on dates together. And I go on dates with her, and she goes on dates with him, right?
Yeah.
So the concept of one-on-one
Goes on
time.
dates with grandpa and grandma, like she gets the date idea.
That's
like
really good.
And so we try to have I have a weekly day with her. Serena has a weekly day with her.
We go to the playground.
So we all have one.
Yeah, everyone gets their quality time. Oh, I love that. Well, it seems like you guys are really playing off, like you really know and are aware of each other's strengths and weaknesses, and you're honoring that. And I think that it's apparent in terms of what you've created, the results, and just like, how you guys are showing up, even in this little conversation that we're having here. So that's great. That's great. To wrap things up, I would just like to ask one question to Serenity and one question to you, Joe. So to Serenity, you as a fellow entrepreneur, mom, wife, woman, self, right? Like there's that part of whatever it is, like the spirituality or just like the self connection. How do you, I want to say balance, but maybe it's not balance. Like, how do you flow with it all? What have you learned along the way of this journey? What advice can you give the rest of us?
Yeah, my advice is, I think the purpose of parenthood, and from a human, existential kind of perspective, is one, you get to revisit your childhood wounds and finally decide you can heal them in a different way because you're a grown-up now. But two, I think it is to, like you said, balance. It's to attempt in everything that you do, to attempt to balance. When I start working a little bit too much, I know I need to pull over this way and spend some more time at home, or mostly with myself. So self-care for moms, in my opinion, is our biggest challenge for probably most moms out there. And I now I just book it into my calendar. So my calendar runs my whole day. Take Della to school, go to this meeting, go get a haircut, do all these things. So if I book it once a month, and I look at my calendar, I book my workouts, I book my dates with Joe, I book my dates with my daughter, I book my dentist appointments and my massage. I now get a massage every month. Oh yeah, and acupuncture, right? So it's in my calendar. And it's accountability. I have to go to these appointments because I've scheduled them. I'm not gonna, just back out on that. So for me, it's, how do I love myself enough to commit to me and know, I'm fully aware, my brain knows, right, that if I am in a calm, balanced, healthy state, but I'm going to be an awesome mom, and I'm going to be an awesome wife, and I'm going to be an awesome employer. And that's really what my mission to help make babies healthier starts with me. And if I forget that, which I've had ups and downs, right, during my career here, it's been 6 years, and we've had, crazy hustle times, and we've had, baby time, right? And but I know that the most creative and the most problem solving and the best manager that I can be always comes when I put me first.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that and being intentional in that. The reason why I created the site was because I didn't see a lot of self-care support for mom. And what you said is just so true, right? Like if there's a reason why they tell us to put our oxygen mask on first.
Right.
and then someone else's. So absolutely. Yeah. And Joe, in terms of, so you didn't share this in this interview, but in checking you out, I came across, and I was really surprised to find out that you discovered that you were autistic in college, right? So how, like, I know that I actually know quite a few parents who have children who have been diagnosed as on the spectrum, and they really want to just do good for their children, and they want to really support them. So from someone who has walked that path, what advice would you give to parents who are looking for better ways to support their children?
Thank you. It's a great question. I think the first thing is the attitude towards autism, that it's not an illness to be treated or cured. There's an over medicalization of autism. When really it's an orientation, it's a way of interacting with the world that has amazing gifts, a lot of really beautiful gifts that come with it. Also very strong challenges, so it's not to minimize how hard it can be for parents or for children or even for us as adults. Lots of challenges, but the reason I don't think of it as a disability or illness is because for every challenge there's a flip side superpower. It really balances it out. So parenting us as a kid is all about, how do we emphasize those gifts? How do we really feed their interests? And then help them mitigate the challenges, but not in a way that has them feel like they're broken. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, you're sick, or you need this therapy, and more it's like, oh no, these are some things that are harder for you because you're autistic. I encourage parents to talk about autism a lot. So there's no shame, there's no hidden thing about it. Let them teach them to talk about it, tell people they're autistic. I need this because this is harder for me. I'm really good at this because I'm autistic. And so really emphasizing the gifts, helping mitigate the challenges, avoiding that pity or victim mindset of autism is some kind of curse.
Totally. Yeah.
It's just like if you had if you adopted a kid of a different race, that's going to be a weird experience for them, or kids of different alternative sexualities or different genders, right? There's not anything to fix in them. It's just that it is a hard world for people who are different. So having compassion for that, helping prepare them for that, while also making it clear that you love them exactly as they are, and you're going to support them and let them, for autistic kids, we want to do the same thing for a long time. We're very into what we're into. And some parents are worried that's too much. I'm like, no, it's not too much. Let them get tired of it. They'll find a way to make a career out of it. They'll find a way to be creative in it. You need to give them more and more. And that's what our economy needs, is specialists, people who are really, really good at one thing. And autistic kids are set up for that. They just are told they're supposed to be a little bit good at everything, which will never be. I could never do math, so awful for me. Some autistic kids are geniuses at math, right? Just depends.
Right.
I was a performer. I wanted to be on stage all day. My mom did the best she could to let me do that. And now I lead sales and marketing for Serenity Kids using my performance skills, right? I found a way
I love it.
Correct that.
I love it. Oh, you guys are such a good pair. It has been such a pleasure talking to you. We look forward to whatever else you guys cook up for us, and really just congratulations on everything you've accomplished in these short years, and can't wait to see what else you guys do.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Appreciate everything you do for moms.
Thank you guys. All right, well, that concludes our session, and hope to speak to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.